in this sentence. In that he saith a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. In other words, by bringing in a new covenant, he automatically is saying the old one is no longer in use. What he's saying is it's one or the other. And it's the new one, and as far as God's concerned, he's no longer operating under the old one. He's made a new one. With Jesus as the human recipient. And so he's not up in heaven anymore looking down at you saying, I want to see some performance out of you, and if you do well enough, you might get a few blessings in your life, but I'm going to hold out until your performance is perfect. No, it's not that way at all. The first one is obsolete. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. He said, well, this is pretty strong language. He said, that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. In other words, it's just about to disappear. Except that the Christians wouldn't let it disappear. We cling to it and hold to it. But we shouldn't. We should cling to the new one. Now, let me just point out to you something about the Old Covenant. This one that he says is obsolete. Let's just go and read something. Go back to Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, or if you don't want to, Phil will put it up here on the screen. Deuteronomy chapter 28. Now, when I first became a Christian, I used to hear lots of messages from Deuteronomy 28 because it talks about God's blessings. And the people who preached all the messages that I heard on Deuteronomy 28, well-meaning people, wanted their hearers to be participants and receive God's blessings. But they made a big mistake. They went back to an obsolete document. Now, it's not that this document doesn't tell us things that are true, but its conditions as a covenant are not in force. But I want you to notice how it's worded, and then I want to point out to you how that the new covenant is just the inversion and the opposite of this. Verse 1, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. It shall come to pass if thou... By the way, when he says thou, who is it? It's not you. He didn't say this to you. If you back up into the chapter, he's talking to the nation of Israel. Those whom we read in Hebrews chapter 8 just a moment ago said, for finding fault with them, he saith, I will make a new covenant. It's them. The them is the nation of Israel, with whom he made this covenant that we're reading from right now. But notice what it says. It shall come to pass, if thou shalt, there's an if, and the condition is, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Now, when I used to hear lots of messages, I can't tell you how many. There's so many. People love to preach from this. And they may still, I'm just not hearing it, but back in, it was about around like 1979, 1980, when I first became Christian, I used to hear so many messages about this, and all the emphasis was put on the word diligently. I used to hear so many messages about diligence, which is a good positive thing. I'm not against diligence. I think that's a good positive word. But that's not where the emphasis belongs in this verse. The emphasis in this verse belongs on this little word all right here. See this word all? Did you know that all is a word that is all-inclusive, that it means everything? It doesn't mean 90%. It doesn't mean 95%. It doesn't even mean 99%. All means all. Okay? If thou shalt observe to do all his commandments, I will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou wilt hearken. Another if, conditional. Hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city. Blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, the fruit of the ground, the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, of the flocks and the sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in and goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies to rise up against thee and be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee against thee 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses and in all that thou settest thine hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land that the Lord thy God giveth thee. And the Lord shall establish thee a holy people unto himself. And he hath sworn unto thee, and if thou shalt keep his commandments, keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, and in the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of the ground, and the land where the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. And the Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure. The heavens shall give the rain unto thy land in its season, and to bless all the work of thine hand. Thou shalt lend unto many nations, and shalt not borrow. The Lord shall make thee the head, not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and shall not be beneath, if thou wilt hearken to the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe to do them. Okay, 13 verses of blessings. And those are all pretty good blessings. I'd like to see why people are attracted to this. Those are good blessings. And it is conditional, as you've read it there. But don't forget what we just read a moment ago. That he said, I will make a new covenant, and it's not like the one that I made with their fathers. Now, that was 13 verses. Oh, 14. I left one out. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words I commanded thee this day to the right hand, to the left, and go after other gods, serve them. Okay, 14 verses with blessings. Now, beginning with verse 15, notice that not only is there a conditional promise of blessings after the performance of the law and obedience to it, 14 verses of blessings, there's also a threat. And it's not an implied threat, it's a vivid, specific, explicit threat. Verse 15 says, And it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all. And look again at this word all. This is the most important word in this verse. A-L-L. What that means is, it's all or nothing. It shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So now there's a bit of a threat here. There's promises of blessing for obedience, but there's also threat of curse for disobedience. Please notice that. So this is a very it's a double-edged covenant here. It's a little bit frightening in a way, a little bit scary. You know, when we read about the giving of the law, back again in Hebrews chapter 12, he points out that even Moses trembled with fear when he heard all of this. Now we read 14 verses of blessings. The curses start in verse 15. And let me see how long this chapter is. And I'm not going to read all the curses because it's really depressing. But curses shalt thou be, curses shalt thou be. Let me see. How long does this chapter go here? Chapter 20. 68 verses in the chapter. Now, somebody do the math for me. 68 minus 14. That would be 44. Is that right? Did I add that right? 68 minus 14. There's 68 verses in the chapter. There's 14 verses of curses, or 14 verses of blessings, and how many verses of curses? 54. Yeah, right. Thank you. So, notice about 3 or 4 times as many verses, way more curses laid out than blessings. A little bit of a thread here. Now, in case you're wondering about what I'm saying to you, in case you're getting tempted to think, well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to see if I can be diligent enough to get all these blessings. Would it be okay if we read a New Testament commentary on these verses? Would that be okay? Instead of just me giving you my opinion, look in Galatians chapter 3 just for a moment. And the Apostle Paul, who was Jewish and who knew something about the law, he's a pretty smart guy in his own right. Notice what he says in verse 10, chapter 3, verse 10 of Galatians. A guy who knows about this law business. Galatians chapter 3, verse 10, Paul says, For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. Now wait a minute, Paul, what are you saying? He says, as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things that are written in this book of the law to do them. That's a quote from Deuteronomy 28, from the curses. And what he's saying here is, if you're going to if you're going to base your relationship with God on doing when he says works of the law, that means working and doing what the law says to do. So if that's going to be the basis of your relationship with God, you're automatically under the curse. That's just what he says. Let me read that to you again. As many as are of the works of the law are under a curse. Not just the ones who fail, But here's what he says. Cursed is everyone that continues